In this video, we're going to dive deep into ICMs, aka Internet Capital Markets, and go to market for ICMs. Now, first of all, what are ICMs? ICMs are on-chain markets for fundraising, trading, participation, and governance. And the whole idea here is to allow people to individually invest into teams at an early stage, be able to essentially really accelerate capital formation. Now, how ICMs differ from the ICO era is that there's a bunch of new mechanisms and new unique features that essentially are helping ICMs be a better version of ICOs. These include better launchpads, better governance models, things like futarky, etc. Right? Now, why do ICMs actually matter? So ICMs allow retail to get into interesting new projects at much earlier stages, right? The whole idea is instead of having venture funds just get in on rounds early, you can actually have communities provide a lot of that capital and be able to win with the project. And then you also get a lot more marketing out of these communities. When you have a bunch of bag holders who really believe in you, they will be your marketing machine. Now, one of the things with ICM is you also get continuous governance and programmable markets, right? So a great example of the governance improvements that you've seen is the introduction of futarky. So for example, MetaDAO actually implements futarky into its token launches. And essentially the whole idea with futarky is people trade in markets corresponding to what would be the value of this token if this proposal passed and versus what would be the value of this token if this proposal failed, right? And organizations accept a proposal when traders think that it will increase the token value. So the whole idea here is almost letting markets decide what's going to drive value to the token. So it's a really, really interesting, essentially, phenomena, right? And that's a big part of what MetaDAO does, right? So their whole idea is they want to make these raises less ruggable and essentially make sure that teams basically unlock tokens based on performance, that there are elements of futarky in governance, and more. So a few examples of ICMs are Pump.fun, which is more so focused on meme coins. It's more permissionless. It's more the Wild West out there. Another example is Believe, which is a Solana-based launchpad, and it's much more creator-based as well. MetaDAO is much more governance-based and also based on, let's say, actual performance metrics. And it is something that I think is one of the more interesting projects out there. It's really taken off lately. Then you also have really interesting launchpads. For example, Legion has partnered with Kraken to essentially really allow Kraken's users to participate in Legion sales. A great example of a project that's fundraising using the ICM meta is our client and partner Tria. So Tria is actually raising on Nazumi powered by Legion. They've currently had around $34 million in deposits for a $2 million sale. And yeah, there's just been massive traction there in terms of people wanting to get in. What's interesting about Tria is they're also running a cookie campaign where essentially if you use the Tria app, you are able to then invest into the Legion sale. So cookie is also a big player in these ICM markets as well, right? And you have other launchpads like Kaido. So there's a bunch of teams here. Essentially, the whole idea is you're making fundraising more accessible and you're making it easier for projects. So you're taking care of a lot of that infrastructure side. You're making it safer for retail as well. A big part around ICMs is this idea of protocolization of everything, right? From equity tokens to brand new tokenized primitives like compute, storage, attention, prediction. You're tokenizing everything, and then ICMs allow you to participate in those markets and get in early and more, right? So an example is Trends.fun tokenizes trending content, and Believe is essentially allows you to create tokens from social posts with a essentially bonding curve style model. Now let's talk about a few go-to-market implications. I'll make a more detailed video in the future, but I just wanted to give you guys a quick high-level overview, right? So essentially, this is a brand new fundraising model where the fundraising comes with a community. This also can be combined with attention capital markets. So ICM are Internet Capital Markets, and attention capital markets, ACM, essentially allow you to invest more if you actually create content about the project. So teams like Cookie and Kaito enable that. So there's a few go-to-market implications here. The first is instead of giving your community an airdrop, you're giving them the ability to invest at a favorable valuation with less lockups. And essentially, you are able to use that as a marketing campaign for your project, right? Because people want to get in the round, they'll create content to get into the round, they'll talk about it, they'll really be interested. And what this does is these early buyers are both your liquidity, they're your users, they're your marketers, they're really the people who will push this forward. And unlike airdrop farmers, they're generally more loyal. Usually they've invested, they have some sort of, lockup, or even if they don't, they're generally more likely to hold their own bags. And since they've worked for this, right? Like they've worked for these basically allocation and they put their own capital in, I think it creates a lot more loyalty than, let's say, an airdrop farmer who just will dump their tokens, right? So a big part of this is that with these raises, you do create the right story around your protocol, you create demand and FOMO, and essentially at a certain point, especially in the crypto market, story drives price often a lot more than fundamentals do, right? So ICMs allow you to create that story, allow people to get involved in the process of storytelling. So a big part of go-to-market as well is the Launchpad platform you choose, because each one of them has different mechanisms, each one of them has different nuances, and this can play a big role. Now, for example, teams like MetaDAO and Legion often allow you to use reputation to figure out who to allow investment from. A lot of these platforms like Kaido and Legion also handle the KYC portions and the compliance portions, so it's a lot easier for you as a project. So these are all big things where fundraising becomes a lot easier. So a lot of what these platforms do is essentially take care of the compliance side as well as help you find the right buyers. And they often have a big community of buyers as well, right? So the whole infrastructure around fundraising has gotten a lot better with a lot of different options depending on which ecosystems you want to tap into. And that becomes a big part of GTM for ICM. Now, a couple key tips for ICM GTM, right? So for example, right now we're working with Tria, which is ridiculously oversubscribed, working with another team, Beamable as well, that's going to be doing their ICM in a couple of days, likely will sell out. And we've seen a few important key takeaways for GTM. The first is that you do need to have market signal, right? So you want to have S-tier people involved in the raise and pushing it during the time of the race, right? So this is something that I think is essential, where a lot of projects, they're just like, hey, we'll just do the raise. We're not going to engage any KOLs, etc. I don't think that's a good idea. I think what you need to do is create market signals by getting top tier people on board. And then once you have that, especially if you have integration with Cookie or Kaido, other KOLs will start pushing it because they want allocation in the sale and they see a good opportunity to do well there. And that's kind of what happened with Tria as well. So that's the first one, is essentially get really good proof from top leaders in the market. And if they're able to push it, that really helps a lot in terms of just traction. The second piece of advice I have is you really have to view this as guerrilla style marketing, where you want to actually create interest and hype for your pre-sale in private communities, whether they're NFT communities or other projects that are in your space, their private communities. These communities are key because their Discords or NFT holders, they have capital, they're interested in opportunities, and you're giving them an opportunity to get in early and potentially get guaranteed or priority allocation in a pre-sale. So that's something that we do very heavily, which is we are basically outreaching all the time and making sure we're setting up these partnerships with other communities. Almost think of it back in 2021 when you had an upcoming hot NFT sale, you would just go and basically give out allow lists to other communities, right? You want to think about that as something to also do for your pre-sales. And I see a lot of teams not do this. They don't engage KOLs, they don't engage these communities, and yeah, their sales kind of suck, right? Which is not the issue with the sales we work with, because we actually do this stuff and they get oversucked. So those are two big takeaways. Third takeaway is if you have some sort of B2C or consumer product, tie that into your sale. So for example, with Tria, if you actually bought a card and they have basically a neobank product, if you bought the card, if you use the product, you actually would be able to get in and get allocation. So it's almost allowing users to become owners. And it's much better than just a pure like, hey, we have a token, just buy it. Give them the chance to become a user and an owner. And I think that's where you see the maximum retention and maximum loyalty. So those are a few takeaways in terms of how ICM works and how you as a project should look at it and engage with it. We'll be creating more videos diving into ICMs for founders. If you are a founder and you want to have a quick chat with me to learn more about how these raises work and get some feedback on your own raise, feel free to shoot me a message on X. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.